Garmin's latest foray into the action camera market is the VIRB Ultra 30, and it's a pretty radical design over their last top-of-the-tree version, which was the VIRB XE. First off, the form factor is incredibly similar to a GoPro, so if anyone's familiar with that, you'll be right at home with this camera straight away. So the big news is we now have 4K, and it comes in a very usable 30 frames per second, and if it's anything less than 25 frames per second, it's not really 4K because it's not usable. Another of the big features is voice recognition, and that seems to be part of this new generation of action cameras, not just for Garmin but other competitors. It's also got image stabilization, and now I think a lot of people are expecting, or at least were hoping, for optical stabilization, but we've got a digital version. Also, if you're invested in the Garmin ecosystem, for instance, you have a Garmin head unit, or like this, a Fenix 3 watch or other smartwatch, you can control the camera through that, so that's a thing. The camera itself isn't waterproof, but you do get a nice solid case that's been designed for better quality audio. Quite conveniently, it comes with a very nice touchscreen on the back as well. Like I said, the camera will do proper 4K, but if you want slow-mo, then the camera comes in at 720p at 240 frames per second, or at 1080p at 120. So I've had the camera for a couple of weeks now, and I've got some initial impressions. So we'll start with that 4K. Now, I think Garmin were right to hold off on 4K until now because they've absolutely nailed it. We've done some initial tests with GoPro's previous top-of-the-line camera, the Hero 4 Black and the VIRB. In good sunlight, when you're looking at stones or grass, the VIRB is just considerably sharper, and it's just much nicer to look at. In shaded, woody type environments, there's not a huge amount of difference, but I think when the light is there, you have good sunlight, the VIRB really excels with 4K. We haven't had a chance to play with GoPro's new Hero 5, but for now, the VIRB is top dog when it comes to 4K. This was going to be the part of the video talking about the Ultra 30 stabilization, which was based on testing on firmware version 2.20. Our first tests showed the stabilization to have some weird behaviours, but since the latest update, it's greatly improved the quality of the stabilization. The camera did a pretty decent job of smoothing out the footage when throwing the bike around quite vigorously during some sprint efforts. That's obviously on the extreme end of cycling out on the road, but during some normal riding, the footage we captured was nice and smooth. We didn't manage to get to test the new firmware off-road before having to send the sample unit back. It's only available in 1080p, but at 25 and 50 frames per second. While the stabilization is genuinely impressive at times, it will drain your battery life, so you'll need to take that into consideration when deciding whether to use it or not. I think the camera performs well enough without the stabilization anyway, especially out on the road. So where I think the VIRB also excels is the user interface. Now, over the XE, their old version, it's just considerably better. It's very intuitive, the icons are very clear, and you never really get lost in the menu, so thumbs up to that. There's a couple of nice quick menu options. You can slide from the left to access the 4 main camera modes: video, slow-mo, expansive mode, and time-lapse. You can also swipe from the top of the camera to access the sensors and all the wireless connectivity options. And if you press at the bottom in the middle of the screen, you get access to the full menu. The best thing about this touchscreen is you can actually use the menu through the waterproof case, which you actually couldn't do with GoPro's Hero 4 Silver, so that's a really nice feature. The voice recognition works. Okay Garmin, start recording. Works. Okay Garmin, stop recording. And it stopped. Nice. Garmin's claimed battery life for the VIRB is 2 hours 15 minutes at 1080p 30 frames per second. They don't clarify whether that's running with sensors, GPS lock or any other connectivity. But in my own test at 1080p 50 frames per second with GPS lock and no additional sensors, I got 1 hour 29 minutes and 16 seconds. Now that's a huge difference, that's a 45-minute difference. Claimed battery life is probably the bare bones, no sensors, no additional connectivity. Take their claims with a pinch of salt, and if you turn anything on, you're going to get reduced battery life. So there you have it. The VIRB Ultra 30 is a very good camera. It does the basics very, very well, especially that 4K. The form factor obviously takes cues from GoPros, but I think it's the right decision. I've never had any problems with this style camera, mounting it in odd places under the saddle and bars or the chest, and it kind of just works, so it's a good decision. When this camera first launched, it was £370 or $500. Now, in response to the GoPro Hero 5, Garmin have actually knocked $100 off in the US market. So if you're American, you're going to get some pretty good value for money. In the UK, maybe not so much, but I would say if I had to go out tomorrow and buy an action camera, it would be the VIRB Ultra 30, just because it does the basics so well. Now, elephant in the room, GoPro have just announced the Hero 5 Black. It's been a long time since there's been a legitimate competitor to GoPro, so we're really interested to see how the VIRB stacks up against the Hero 5 when we get our hands on one.
Okay, Garmin, stop recording.